One of the most inhospitable locations on the planet. The area surrounding the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Ukraine has for decades managed to capture the imagination of audiences in a broad spectrum of media. Inside the gaming industry, it is known for some of gaming's most memorable moments. From Call of Duty's Pripyat mission to the Stalker series of video games. What makes the irradiated wasteland in the north of Ukraine so interesting? And what effects has it had on other video games throughout the years? That's something we'll be exploring this week. Start the show. Boom, 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 boom. Hey you, it's Henk from GC again, and this week we're taking a dive into one of gaming's most recognizable and unique locations, Chernobyl. To do so requires a little bit of context in the form of a history lesson. The Chernobyl nuclear power plant was built in 1972, and it produced a lot of power used by the then Soviet Union. Located in northern Ukraine by the Belarusian border, it was largely an unremarkable location. This was to change in 1987, when a large explosion rocked reactor number 4. Technicians at the plant had attempted to make the reactor run more efficient, and in doing so had ignored established safety procedures in order to reach new production targets. In doing so, however, the reactor could not be shut down in time to prevent a meltdown, a process where the reactor building got so hot it melted its core, spilling reactor fuel and causing an enormous explosion, destroying the entire reactor building and part of the connected power plant. The resulting explosion shot up millions of tons of radioactive dust into the air, which would go on to permanently contaminate a large swath of both Belarus and Ukraine. The amount of radiation released during the accident was so much that a lot of it would spread via Scandinavia as far as Portugal. In these countries, measures had to be taken to prevent people from getting sick from the radiation. Produce from animals and fields had to be restricted, meaning cow milk, for example, could not be drank in the countries for several weeks, with governments hoping that farm animals and crops would shed the radiation naturally within the span of several weeks. Meanwhile, an even more serious situation was developing in Ukraine. The molten lake of lava, which was once reactor number 4, had burnt a hole in the floor of that reactor, and radioactive lava was spilling out at an alarming rate. If this radioactive lava was to reach the groundwater deposits, a chain reaction could happen that would cause an explosion that had the potential to irradiate much of Eastern and Central Europe. Coal and steel miners from Siberia were ordered in to reinforce the foundations of the plant via a tunnel to prevent this doomsday scenario from playing out. Many of the miners would later succumb to radiation sickness because of the high doses of radiation that they were exposed to, especially at the mouth of the tunnel, where the radiation doses were up to 300 C-foots an hour. To put that into perspective for you, normal everyday background radiation consists of about 1.26 micro-C-foots per year. So this is hundreds of times more radiation exposure than the human body is normally used to. The cities of Pripyat and Chernobyl, built largely to support the activities of the nuclear power plant, had to be evacuated. The town was exposed to so much radiation that in the long term it would be uninhabitable. Residents were told to pack their bags and were evacuated in haste in the morning of the 27th of April 1987, a full day after the disaster had occurred, and a 40-mile exclusion zone would be set up devoid of all human life. The Soviet authorities succeeded in putting out the worst of the fires caused by the molten core that was formerly known as reactor number 4. Soviet officials decided the best course of action would be to build a temporary enclosure or sarcophagus to stop the plant from sending radioactive particles into the open air, and this cleanup operation provides most of the content for its resulting pop culture status. The cities of Pripyat and Chernobyl form an abandoned and uninhabitable area which is extremely rare in Europe and the Western world. When visiting the city, it appears as if time has stood still. Its buildings, long since abandoned, Chernobyl would disappear out of the public view for the next 20-odd years. And although there are some references in video games of that era, since 1987, it wouldn't really return to the spotlight properly until 2005 with the release of Stalker: Shadow of Chernobyl. The Stalker series takes the real-life events at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant and flips it on its head a little. The disaster at the nuclear power plant would be used as a cover for post-Cold War engineers and scientists for experiments, which is why Stalker's exclusion zone is filled with gravity and physics-defying anomalies. Like in real life, the zone is mostly lawless and abandoned, except of course for mutated animals and scavengers that lend the game its iconic name, Stalkers, which is in itself a reference to a Soviet film called Roadside Picnic, which features about the same scenario, except of course not taking place in Chernobyl. The animals and beasts seen in the exclusion zone in the Stalker series are of course completely made up. However, Chernobyl has seen a large influx in wolves, deer and other native animals. The area has turned into sort of a nature reserve where animals can pretty much live without any human interference, albeit heavily irradiated. Back to the game, however. The Ukrainian studio GSC would first announce the game in 2001, but it would take another 6 years of development hell for the game to officially release, and would pit stalkers, bandits, the Ukrainian military and the factions named Duty and Freedom against the cult-like Monolith for control of the zone. Its gameplay is a bit wonky, and the Stalker series is famous for its bugs. However, the scenario and the story are timeless masterpieces that deserve at least one playthrough, if you can make it through the crashes, that is. Sequel S.t.a.l.k.e.r Sky was released a year later with updated graphics. The game is a prequel to the first game. In it, you join the Clear Sky organization to prevent s.t.a.l.k.e.r, the protagonist from the first game, from reaching the center of the zone and the secrets it holds. I don't know how it's exactly possible, but GSC released the game even buggier than the original Stalker, and at release it was nigh on unplayable. Stalker Call of Pripyat would come out in 2009 and is probably, in my opinion anyway, the best game in the series. It features a more open style world instead of a linear sort of level by level design the previous games were known for, and it even allowed you to go into the deserted city of Pripyat. Much of the famous areas in the exclusion zone that you can visit in the Stalker series are recreations of the real life location, and especially the Pripyat sections of the game still give me the creeps a little. The best part about the Stalker series of games is probably its active modding community, and if you've finished up your vanilla playthrough of the game, it's certainly worth it to go to ModDB and check out their collection of mods for the game. After the bankruptcy of THQ, GSC World would also bring out the multiplayer shooter Sivarium. However, this game only has a niche following and personally isn't worth your time because the multiplayer in it isn't very good. And it also doesn't have a single player. I guess that kind of speaks for itself. Perhaps its most famous iteration is a section of missions during the campaign of Call of Duty 4. A young Lieutenant Price tells of his exploits with Captain Macmillan in taking down the infamous ultranationalist and arms dealer Imran Zakhaev. Call of Duty's most famous sniper mission of all time starts the player off outside the city of Pripyat, where you have to fight or stealth your way over to the Pripyat Hotel, while you visit such famous locations as its swimming pool, the Pripyat Carnival, and previously mentioned hotel, from where you can see the nuclear power plant in the distance. All of these locations were faithfully recreated by Studio Infinity Ward to truly recapture the city's atmosphere, and I'd say they were quite successful in doing so. The section is, to me, one of the most thrilling parts of all of the Call of Duty games combined, something Activision has been trying to recapture in every game since, unsuccessfully in my opinion. Call of Duty 4's version of Pripyat gives it the same feeling of dread that sections of the city have in the Stalker series, albeit with a little less threat of radiation. The city is an almost perfect backdrop for the infiltration and assassination of Imran Zakhaev. The game also featured a multiplayer variant of the Pripyat map called Block, which was famous for its building-to-building firefights and camping. Call of Duty would feature the location in Modern Warfare 2 as Wasteland, and the Special Ops mission Hidden in Call of Duty Black Ops, it was known as Grid, and again it was seen in Modern Warfare 3 as the map Fallen. It is however questionable if Chernobyl will remain an inspiration for video games in the coming future. The last few years the Ukrainian government with EU funding has been working on a new safe confinement to put a new shelter over the exposed reactor. The old sarcophagus was only meant to protect the plant for a few years. However, has stood for nearly 3 decades. The new safe confinement will shelter the reactor while it is finally being dismantled. That means that the zone as we know it today is starting to really actually disappear. But at the same time, we aren't lacking any nuclear or radioactive wastelands in gaming. Both the Metro series of games as well as Fallout explore these topics, albeit they on a much larger scale. However, none of these games have managed to recapture the danger of radiation as well as Stalker did in 2007. With the breakup of publisher THQ, however, we might never see a true sequel to the game. There are plenty of games that take their inspiration from the events at Chernobyl. Even Metal Gear took a little inspiration from it in the form of one of its characters in its 1998 release. Do you know of any other games that take inspiration about what transpired in the Chernobyl exclusion zone? Let us know about this in the comments. That was it for this episode of GC. I hope you've enjoyed it. Certainly let us know what you think about it in the comments. If you feel I've missed anything, you can let us know that too. In the next episode, we'll be examining what went wrong with Mass Effect Andromeda's development, so I hope to see you again in about a week or two.